What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast today. Well, plenty of action happening around the Pittsburgh Steelers as they are looking to deal a veteran cornerback and have signed a rookie off of the Kansas City Chiefs practice squad. Meanwhile, no commitment on their starting left tackle this week against the LA Rams. We'll dive into that. And a running back on the trade block headed elsewhere for possibly a second-round pick. Me and Steven have conflicting thoughts on that one, but we'll dive into it and more. It is a beautiful fall day here in the Berg. Nice and crisp, but not too crisp. Leaves are all yellow at this point. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. I'll take your word for it being a nice day outside. I haven't gone outside yet. But I feel a little stiff, a little tight. You know what I did last night? I played some pickleball last night for it was my first real intense pickleball session. I played with a bunch of not 80-year-olds, but a few older ladies and gentlemen at this there's this brewery around the corner from my house that I played at. They are you step into the court and you think that you're, I'm youngish. I feel like I have some athleticism still in me. No, I'm getting worked up and down the court by these older women. So, yeah, that's their territory. I learned a lot last night.
I was gonna say you're definitely stepping on their toes in that onto their turf. You would say that's I would imagine the sore thing. What's the number? It's like $4 million of healthcare bills because of pickleball injuries this season, just because people, that sport is, it kill you. It could kill you. I've never played it. It's tennis, right? It's just tennis for slow people.
Tennis. Yeah, it's like tennis with a wiffle ball. So it's like a little dumbed down a little bit, but it's intense. It doesn't look like you watch people play it and you're like, oh, this is easy. I could do this in my sleep. No, that thing's intense. Yeah.
That's awesome. Add some booze in there, and that sounds like a great night. Maybe next time, have a little All Steelers Talk show up, school some old people, or lose to some old people. We'll see what happens. Either way, we'll definitely get it on camera. Sounds like a good night. My night was pretty chill up until Desmond King and Darius Rush decided to make a little switch here for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they decided, well, we don't want you anymore. We're going to go young. We're going to go new. Former or veteran corner, I guess not former Pittsburgh Steeler at this point, but current Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback Desmond King is reportedly on the trade block. They will look to move him as quickly as possible, but if they could not find a trade partner, they plan to release the 28-year-old. He played one defensive snap since signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers at the beginning of the season. A name that, me and you, we made a big fuss about this. I made a real big fuss about this because, for one, I thought it made a ton of sense. I still think it made a ton of sense. Just didn't seem to work out in their favor. He never really got comfortable, I guess. They decide now they're going something new. They reportedly add Darius Rush off of the Kansas City Chiefs practice squad, a former fifth-round pick for the Indianapolis Colts, still a rookie in the NFL. Let's start with King. Either a trade or a release is probably going to happen today by 4 o'clock. We were both surprised. I don't think that's even a question. What were your thoughts when you saw the news?
Well, it was a little disappointing, right? Like you said, we both were pretty excited about the addition of Desmond King. Thought he fit a position in need, thought he was a talented player, and he just didn't, just didn't work out for whatever reason. Man, his practices must have been rough. That one defensive snap was not necessarily what you wanted, but his practices must have not been very impressive. Now that it looks like they're going a little bit younger, so yeah, I guess it makes sense in that area. It's just, man, it's disappointing. I just had such high expectations for Desmond King. I know he was in a crowded room, but I just thought that group needed someone like that and needed another reliable guy that you could turn to if something went wrong, if there was some kind of emergency. And it's a little concerning that he wasn't that guy. Especially because I don't know if Darius Rush is
that guy.
Is a sure thing at this point. It seems like a talented player, again, young guy that you can maybe work with, but it's just, I think overall just disappointing that Desmond King didn't work out.
Yeah, I agree. Like, you're coming off of 5 interceptions in the last 2 seasons. You're a starter in Houston. You signed with Pittsburgh. It's a big fuss. Nothing the first couple of weeks of the season. Finally get a helmet against the Houston Texans, your former team, which is a big deal. Doesn't touch the field on defense. Just takes, I think, 1, maybe 2 kick returns. Houston scored like 7 touchdowns, so like 6, 7 kick returns. Didn't do much with those. And at that point, you're thinking, okay, this guy's got to make some moves on defense, but that's going to happen eventually. The Steelers' corners are struggling. Meanwhile, there's no relief inside or outside, and you're thinking, okay, Desmond King could sub in there, play the nickel a little bit, work with Chandon Sullivan. Chandon Sullivan's an outside capable guy. If they got to bounce him outside, he's listed as the starter against the Baltimore Ravens, or the co-starter, I guess, and plays 1 defensive snap, and now he's gone. It's a very strange situation for the Steelers. What I'm worried about here, and I don't know what went into the call, or I guess they're trying to go young, and I understand that to a degree. What I'm worried about is this going to turn into another Ahkello Witherspoon situation, where you gave up on a guy that a lot of people saw talent in, that you saw talent in, and you said, hey, you're not clicking fast enough. This isn't working out soon as we wanted it to, or as swiftly as we wanted it to, and we're going to move on. And now Desmond King's going to end up somewhere else, and he's going to be balling out like Ahkello Witherspoon's balling out in LA right now. And now you missed out on an opportunity. Meanwhile, your corners are still very much so struggling. I think that's definitely a concern of mine. Do you think they find a trade partner by 4:00? I feel like that's what they got to make the move, unless they're going to wait a day on Darius Rush. But you can't sign Darius Rush until you get rid of Desmond King, unless you cut somebody else. So I would imagine King's the guy that goes. Do you think a trade happens before 4 p.m.?
I'd have to imagine one does. I still think, like you said, people will still see talent in Desmond King. I think there's definitely something there. And cornerback feels like a position that you can that basically every team needs depth at.
Yes.
It's not something you can just have, a top 2 or 3 and feel good with. Like, Desmond King, I think, is still, I don't know, I think still capable of being a really, really maybe not a starter. I think he actually, I think
he could be.
Right. Yeah. Why would I temper that? I think he can be a starter in this league, and I think there are plenty of teams that could use that. So I think a trade probably will get done by 4:00 if I had to predict. Maybe not for the value that you thought you could have gotten, if you would. He's probably not as valuable as when he first arrived in Pittsburgh. But I still think there's plenty of value there, and the Steelers would clearly be happy to flip him for whatever they can get.
Yeah, I agree. Like, if you could get anything, at that point, it's better than just cutting them and moving on, and you get 0 compensation for him. But I don't know. I still think I think it's still weird, but I agree with you. I think that at 28 years old, he'll turn 29 by the end of the season, coming off of, 2-3 seasons, I think 2 in Houston, where he started a total of 25 out of 33 games. You got to remember, this guy's a former All-Pro in the NFL. Like, he's done some things, but he's also been a couple of places at this point. I think somebody's calling, and the only reason that they wouldn't call is because they just know that he's going to get released, and you might as well just go pick him up. I think that's where things get complicated. Like, it'd be one thing if you made the decision, hey, we're gonna either trade or release you by the end of the day, but then you just let Darius Rush chill until tomorrow afternoon, and then you went, okay, let's go get him now. Now you kind of put yourself in a situation where all 31 other teams are like, why would we make a move when this guy's going to hit the open market? But at the same time, if you want him, if you want Desmond King, go get Desmond King. Don't wait on it. So I could see it happening. It happens all the time. Frank Clark isn't one of them. He got released, but Randy Gregory's a name that he was gone. Now he's in San Francisco. That was a weird trade situation. I think that could happen with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know. What's trade comp? It's a 6th round pick. You think it's 6th rounder for?
That's what I'm saying. If you're a team looking to go get Desmond King,
yeah,
I don't think it's worth, if you need a corner like that, I don't think it's worth waiting around for him to hit the open market, because then you're competing with everyone else in the league. Yeah. I think it would be much more valuable to go give up whatever light draft compensation you have to in order to lock a guy up that you need.
Yeah, I agree. Could see it happening by 4:00. Meanwhile, Darius Rush will be here, assumingly the same time that Desmond King finds a new home. A former 5th-round pick for the Indianapolis Colts was a surprise cut at the end of the preseason when they finalized their 53-man roster. Ended up in Kansas City, was there for a couple of weeks, then got released or got waived, got signed back to their practice squad, spent all season from there. He's a 6'2", 195 corner out of South Carolina. Very athletic, very lengthy. He had 2 interceptions his senior season with the Gamecocks, an interception the season before. 2 tackles for loss, which is pretty impressive, and 7 pass deflections as a senior. I mean, the Steelers brought him in for a pre-draft visit. They obviously saw something. Is this he's got to be here for the next 4 weeks minimum. We're already surprised by the move, but does it have any upside? Like, is it a move that you could look at and say, okay, well, maybe they see something just because they're going younger?
Well, I think there's certainly upside. I mean, anytime you sign a kid who's this young, fresh out of the draft, who has that kind of athleticism and speed and length, there's always going to be upside. But, I think this also kind of reflects that they have a lot of faith in Joey Porter. That's not surprising. Anyone who's watched this team over the past couple of weeks knows that he's been getting a lot more time, a lot more reps. He's been a bigger and bigger part of the defense. But this is just, I think, another, both a public vote of confidence and then just kind of through the natural way that they're going to organize their team, just an indicator that tells me they really believe in him as not just a third corner, but, a backup option, but as someone who can really work his way towards starter reps. So I think that's an encouraging thing. I mean, in addition to just what you see on the field, the fact that, this organization sees enough off the field and practices, things like that, to really believe that Joey Porter is the guy moving forward. I think that's my bigger takeaway from the fact that they are moving on from Desmond King and turn into Darius Rush as maybe one of their other options.
Do you think Darius Rush is a guy that could actually play some snaps for Pittsburgh over the next? I mean, you got to think like Desmond King couldn't get on the field for more than a snap in 5 games. How do you think Darius Rush is going to come in here, learn a defense, step? I mean, it took Akella Witherspoon like 8 weeks before this guy stepped on a field, did some stuff, and then the next season he was hurt, and we know the story there. But I mean, I don't think I have expectations that he's even going to play in these 4 games. I think he's just going to be chilling. So is this a move? Is it, in my eyes, a little bit, and I don't know how much I think it's a good, like, hey, this is a good shot in the dark. You might as well try it out if we see an opportunity there and we like this guy. And the Steelers might have saw something. They brought him in for a pre-draft visit. So that, in my eyes, that says something. Like, that says, hey, look, if we see the talent in him. I see it more as a future move. A next season, we could walk into the year with Joey Porter Jr., Darius Rush, if he is worth any playing time. Corey Trice will be back, so we could work him in a little bit if need be. Patrick Peterson will still be here. Maybe we could go out and find another corner in the draft or in free agency. And we have the building blocks to spark something with a bunch of young players and some upcoming talent. I mean, a 5th-round pick, the expectations there, like at some point you should earn a starting job in the NFL or at least have an opportunity to. Maybe the Steelers see that as just like a, maybe not this year, he doesn't add any value, but next year and the years after, we'd rather have our hands on him and him be familiar with our team than, what we have now. And Desmond King's he's not a part of the future. He's just a part of right now, and we didn't really need him.
Yeah, I absolutely think that. I think that's a good point, and I think it's definitely a forward-facing move. I think you've got this year pretty settled.
Yeah.
So just bringing in some more competition, bringing in some more depth, some young depth, just to see. It's a little bit of a shot in the dark, but I also think that they are going to end up hanging on to him for a little bit and just keeping him kind of in the Rolodex, I guess, just so they have a contact and can keep him current with this team. And maybe, like you said, look at next year and look at him as an option for next year. Cause like you said, this year, when he's jumping on this moving train, to use a Tomlinism, like it's moving pretty fast and it's pretty far along. It's just going to be hard to catch up. So when you bring a guy like that in at this point, it's always going to be kind of forward facing and looking towards the future instead of, oh yeah, Darius Rush is going to be starting for us in week 12 or whatever against, I don't even know who they play, but
wait, yeah, I have no idea. But yeah, I agree. I think that's, and in that thinking, I agree with it. I don't mind the move, especially because Desmond King wasn't doing anything, and I think that you might as well plan for the future because that's a huge need for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And kind of like, think about it like this: like, say Kenny doesn't work out, or say you need an offensive lineman, or say you're sitting at a position in the NFL draft next year where, yeah, you could get a corner, or you could get a center, or you could get an inside linebacker, or, you could fill another position in need. Okay, cool. We already have options at corner. They might not be the best options, but we have options, and Joey Porter Jr. could lead the way. I think it's a good security blanket for next offseason if it works out,
Just
and this
like
guy.
Delayed 5th round pick, basically.
Exactly. Exactly. This guy ran a 4.36, by the way, at the combine. So worst case scenario, man. At some point they had Kalen Barnes, which last year was the dude who ran like a 4.21 or something. So, just sign them all. Get some speed. Let them rock. I like it. I don't mind the move overall. We'll see what happens, but I wouldn't have much expectations for what Darius Rush is going to bring to the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2023. What's up, guys? I have super exciting news to share with you. We have merchandise, from t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, and nutties, and plenty of designs, from Pickens to Pickett, Muth, Bleed Black and Gold, and of course, all of your All Steelers talk gear, all available at blackandgoldapparel.myspreadshop.com or on the store tab at our YouTube page. We cannot thank you guys enough. We would not be here without each and every one of you, and it feels awesome to be able to represent the AST brand and to spread that representation out to all of Steelers Nation. We know that you guys and us, we are one, and this has been one hell of a ride. Again, we cannot thank you guys enough. Check out everything at blackandgoldapparel.myspreadshop.com or on the YouTube page, or the store tab, on our YouTube page, to get all your AST gear and whatever t-shirts, sweatshirts, shorts, nutties, coffee mugs that you're thinking. Again, thank you guys. Carrying on to the big news of yesterday, Mike Tomlin was asked about the offensive tackle position, and the left tackle position more specifically, in the return of Dan Moore Jr. from an MCL sprain after the bye week. He practiced on Monday with the starters, but he wasn't positive that he was going to start in week 7 against the Rams. Broderick Jones, obviously the 14th overall pick, would be the guy. I think he's the fan favorite to start, but you just don't know what's going to happen. When Tomlin was asked about if Moore is healthy, if he will start, this is the quote, "That's a big if. We've got some work ahead of us. He'll be given the opportunity to show his progress over the course of the week, and we'll make that decision at the appropriate time. It doesn't behoove us to make hypothetical statements in the early portions of the week. He looked pretty good yesterday. We'll see where the week leads us." Your thoughts on that one when Tomlin dropped the "that's a big if"? Felt like he kind of was beating around the bush a little bit of the, is Dan Moore going to start? We don't really know, and maybe could be interpreted as him saying, why are you asking this question? Of course he's going to start, but also could probably be interpreted as, yeah, I don't want to make it public right now, but yeah, Broderick Jones is the starter. Unfortunately, we'll leave the door open for Dan Moore Jr. What were your thoughts yesterday?
Well, I just think if the gap between what Broderick Jones was doing and what Dan Moore was doing was wider, he would have been a little bit more assertive about, yeah, we need Dan back. Like, he's an important part of the offensive line. We're absolutely going to slot him in if he's healthy enough. But quite honestly, I don't think the gap between Broderick and Dan is that wide. So I think this might be. I think he's just. First and foremost, actually, I did not really kind of think that the Dan Moore injury was going to be this serious. Especially coming off the bye. I thought he'd be back in the lineup right away. So I think that's a little bit concerning. But also, look, Broderick was pretty good against the Ravens. I don't think he gave them many issues. So I think they're both comfortable, and that would force them to kind of say to Dan Moore, like, look, we're not going to need just 75%. We're not going to slide you in there at 75% just because we need a tackle there. We need an NFL tackle there, or they're comfortable waiting until he's absolutely 100% because Broderick has done, at least for one game, has done pretty well or 1.5 games. I forget when Dan went down.
Yeah, I guess it'd be 1.5.
Yeah, about roughly 1.5 or whatever. So I think I think they are more comfortable waiting, and I think you can kind of interpret it two ways: as either Dan's real far away from a return, or Dan is just not 100% yet, and they're real comfortable waiting until he actually is.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that they're in a sticky situation, a more complicated situation than people want to narrate it as. And a lot of people are looking at it like, I can't believe that Dan Moore Jr. would start again. You have your first round pick. You got to toss him into the fire. You got to see what happens. I don't disagree with that. I think that is the right course of action, to let the young guy get experience in a game until he starts screwing up. But I also think that Broderick Jones did look good in his first start. He hasn't always looked good in the NFL. I don't think he's looked particularly good when he'd had to step in before he had to step in for Dan Moore in Baltimore. And I think that the Steelers are looking at that. Like, why would you allow him to struggle out there? And then you raise a billion other questions, and they understand that. A lot of people who are yelling at the narrative don't understand that. It's the same thing as like Kenny Pickett or so on and so forth. You tossed Kenny into the fire last season, and after he struggled for 2-3 games, immediately the conversation sparked. Kenny's not it. Kenny's not the guy. Maybe Kenny is. Maybe the Steelers don't have a quarterback. Maybe that's going to happen with Broderick Jones. He's going to struggle. People are going to notice it. People are going to say, oh, man, maybe Broderick's, what a wasted pick. This guy could be a bust. You never know. I think the Steelers have a full understanding of the pressure that comes with putting him in a football game right now and letting him be the full-time starter. And they want to assure themselves. I think that was the biggest thing. Is it kind of sounded like, yeah, we're non-committal, but I think it was more of a, we really don't know if we're 100% ready to make Broderick the full-time starter or make Dan Moore the full-time starter moving forward. And, until we have a definite on that, we're not going to put any added pressure. Because like, think about it. Think about what today brings if Mike Tomlin walks to the podium and says either one of those guys are a starter. Think about it. Today, all we're talking about is Broderick Jones being the starter or the backup. He's the only person getting interviewed in the locker room as either the starter or the backup. And he's getting hounded with questions about either replacing Dan Moore or not replacing Dan Moore. And that sucks. Like, and Mike Tomlin understands that. Everybody understands that. I think that to a degree he was being genuine. He said it in his Mike Tomlin Tuesday attitude kind of way, but I think there is some real train of thought of, we're not just trying to keep this a secret. It's like, we really don't know what direction we're going to go yet.
Right, but I think if they had said, when healthy, Dan is our starter.
Yes.
Then I don't think Broderick is facing any kind of questions. Like he's not. I mean, that's just business as usual. That he wouldn't face any more questions than he does on a normal week. So that was what confused me a little bit. Is that this was not. I mean, Mike kind of framed it as some insane hypothetical, but I don't think it is. Like it's if Dan Moore is healthy, like if and when. I mean, that's not a.
Yeah. Do you anticipate that? Do you anticipate it's Dan Moore when healthy?
Yeah, I think so. I don't. I mean, I know Dan hasn't been great this season. Probably not as good as I thought he would be, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think for all the same reasons that you outlined, the pressure of Broderick being a full-time starter right away. I just don't. He did well in one start. I don't know if he's ready for a full season of that. So I think Dan, I don't know. It feels a little weird saying this, but I think you throw Dan in until the wheels fall off, like until he actually proves that he's incapable of being a part of a winning offensive line, which I don't think he's done yet. You got to roll with him. And I think I don't know. You keep Broderick on the back burner for as long as you can a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think the longer that you kind of delay having to throw him into the fire right away, the better it will be for him long term.
Yes, I agree.
And I think he's got a lot of growing to do. So I think for all those reasons, that's why I think Dan is probably the better option at this point.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I think that's if you're gonna play, it's like what Broderick Jones has been able to develop as in these first 5 weeks, I think is pretty significant, because you saw it like when Broderick Jones first showed up, there were a lot of instances. I mean, all summer, we saw it all summer. Dan Moore was the better left tackle. And then Broderick develops. He admits he's raw. Like he literally said it before the Baltimore game. He's like, yeah, I was pretty raw coming into the NFL. I'm like, all right, that's huge. And then he starts and he doesn't play bad, but I think that's how the Steelers view it. I agree with you. I think that, and I think they agree with you. Like, why would you remove something that isn't broken? You know, Dan Moore might not be a superstar and he might have his issues, but he hasn't been like alarmingly concerning at this point. You know, we're talking about Mason Cole being alarmingly concerning right now. Dan Moore is not in that same category. So why would you for one take a risk that Broderick Jones is going to kind of take a step back or have his mishaps, and two, why would you kind of waste Dan Moore? You know what I mean? And that's weird. A lot of people are going to say, like, what do you mean you can't waste anybody who isn't good? Yeah, but you could utilize him as a safety blanket until you don't have to do it. You know what I mean? Like you could look at Dan Moore and just say, well, he's okay because we're working on Broderick and we need somebody to kind of fill in here so that we could perfect Broderick. And until we can't do that anymore, I agree. I think that's the course of action. Until
you're 100% sure that Broderick is an upgrade over him, which I don't think is. I don't think
not this season, not right now.
So until that's the case, you gotta wait it out.
Yeah, exactly. And if this is next season, it's a totally different conversation. He's a sophomore in the NFL. It's his year. You start him. But right now, there's just no. You know what I mean? You just let him rock. You see what you got in Dan, and then I think everything's comfortable from there. You know what I mean? There's no drama. There's no issues. It's just Broderick's like, yeah, man, I get it. Like, I'm a rookie. I'm 5 games into my NFL career. I'll start when the time comes. I know it's coming. I think everything will be okay. I agree. I think that's the course of action. I wouldn't anticipate a change. And people are going to lose their minds, but I would not anticipate a change. All right. Speaking of change, last thing I want to talk about here, Najee Harris. Topic of conversation seemingly every week for one reason or another. The replacement of Jaylen Warren seems to be the hottest hitter, the hottest headline, whatever you want to say. Well, USA Today's Corey Woodruff, apologize if I got that name wrong, believes that that change could happen, and that if the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for it to happen, they could get a pretty decent penny for Najee Harris. He wrote 32 traits, one for each team that he believes they should execute before the trade deadline. Me and you don't see eye to eye on the compensation for this one, but he says Najee Harris is the guy they should move. Quote, this might be a little surprising. Don't think it's surprising for anybody. I just want to toss that out there right now. I think everybody who watches, covers, talks about the Pittsburgh Steelers read that first sentence and went, no, we've all been thinking this for a long time. Okay. This might be a little surprising, but the Steelers might want to transition running back Jaylen Warren into the starting spot. Again, just not surprising at all. Shout out to Corey, but not surprising at all. That starting spot, and consider sending Harris to a team that would better utilize his talents. Harris hasn't quite been the 1,000-yard rusher we've gotten used to this season, and it'd be very easy to see a Super Bowl caliber team calling up the Steelers and seeing if Harris is available. He then says that he believes that the Pittsburgh Steelers can get as much as a second-round pick to a team that is looking to make a playoff run this season and needs a hard-nosed, kind of gritty running back. I mean, I think that would be a great move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You do not think that would be a great move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I want to hear your thoughts on Corey's belief here and his idea of trading Najee Harris.
Yeah, I'm on board with this theoretically. You know, like the concept of trading Najee is not something I'm opposed to. I've talked about it before. I think Jalen's got to take more of the carries. He's just better suited for this offense right now. But
yeah,
come on, Najee's not nearly. Najee's being underrated here, I think.
Yes,
and I think a second round pick would be a pretty disappointing return for a player of his caliber that still has a lot left to give. I get it. You might not get a first round pick, but only 1 second seems like wildly underrating a guy who was drafted in the first round himself, and in my opinion has played up to that caliber. You know, like he has played like a first round running back, in my opinion, especially a back end of the first round running back. Like, I don't know. I think if you're going to go if you're gonna go for a second, I think you got to get one more pick out of that. And this is like you used this line last week, but this is Omar Khan we're talking about. If he's making that trade, like I don't think he would settle for anything less. If it's a second round pick, it's got to come with a fourth round or two or something like that. It's got to be there's got to be a little more meat on that bone, I think, for them to seriously consider a Najee trade, because I don't know, he's more valuable than a second round pick is to the Steelers right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, right now I agree with that one. If you're talking right in this instance and where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand, and I talked about this on my to-go, I kind of broke the whole thing down, but you start from the beginning of this would be surprising maybe to transition to Jaylen Warren, would not be surprising at all, would be the most predictable and, fan sought out action and move the Pittsburgh Steelers could make. Hasn't played like the 1,000-yard rusher. I think also, sorry, don't agree with that one, because I think if you've watched Najee Harris the last 2 seasons, it has been 1,000 yards per every ounce of effort that he could possibly put onto a field. It has not been easy. It has not been explosive runs. It has been, we're going to hand this guy the ball 300 times a season, and he's going to get 1,000 yards out of it and 7 touchdowns, because he's been a 7 touchdown scorer the last 2 seasons. And we're going to ground and pound him right to 1,000 yards, 0 help, 0 offensive line. This year they said, you know what? Let's not kill Najee Harris. Let's give him a little bit of help. Let's actually play Jaylen Warren, allow him to be part of this offense as well, so that when we get to a spot where it's week 17, week 18, Najee isn't limping around talking about how he has to do yoga 4 times a week to be able to stand. And that's why he's not on pace to be 1,000-yard rusher. And I still think he is. Like, he's got 247, I believe, on the season. He's averaging 3.9 yards a carry. Like, I mean, it's not bad to have for a guy who was only taking 60% of the snaps compared to last year when it was like 95% of the snaps. I don't think that his production has gone down. I just think his usage has gone down. I also don't think that the Steelers are looking at this and saying, hey, call Kansas City, call Buffalo. Who needs a running back? Who's in the hunt for the Super Bowl? Let's give them a running back. I think they're thinking, well, when we're in the hunt for the Super Bowl at the end of the season, we're going to need Najee Harris. Like, he's going to be part of this game. He's probably going to be the biggest impact that we have to get us into and through the postseason. So I just don't think that train of thought matches up when it comes to the compensation part of it. If you're giving up Najee Harris for a second-round pick, in my opinion, that is a steal. I think a guy who has 1, maybe 2 years left on his deal, if you pick up his 5th-year option, I think that is a big if. I mean, cool, but you're gonna have to either make the decision where you don't pay this guy, which chances are you're not going to pay this guy, or and you just let him walk, or you could trade him next year, I guess, and see what you could get out of him. But at that point, who's trading for a running back on the last year of their deal in the middle of the season to say, yeah, no, we're probably not going to pay him, and here's a second-round pick. I just don't think that would add up. I think that getting a second round, maybe a second and a fourth, you might be there. Like, maybe the Omar Khan theory holds some ground here. But at minimum, a second-round pick, I think, is a good move. Do I think the Steelers would make it? I want to say no, but I think I just, like, if you're a team and you're calling me tomorrow and I'm Omar Khan and you're saying, hey, let's start with a second rounder, let's see what we could go from there. Like, you got to be listening, right? There's no way you're sitting, nah, I'm good. We're good. Thank you. Like, you got to be listening.
I think you're listening, but the extent to which you're listening, I don't know. You can start at a second round pick, but I don't think that's where this conversation ends. Like, I just don't. I don't know. I think there are plenty of teams that if they are in the hunt and they think a bruising running back who can also catch the ball in the backfield is the key to them making a longer postseason run, like, who cares about it? Like, a second round pick is pennies to pay for a guy that you really believe in and think can carry you pretty far. It could help you get pretty far. So, like, what's thrown in a fourth or a third at that point? Like,
yeah, but at that point, if you're talking third, fourth, or second and a third, or second and a fourth, I'm listening. I'm like, I'm all ears on this conversation.
Yeah. I just don't think the Steelers are going to settle for would settle for a second round pick. And I think you can start your conversation there, but like that's the start, you know?
What if it's Chicago?
What do you mean? Like,
what if it's Chicago that calls? Right now they have the first pick and the second pick in the draft, which means you're essentially getting the 32nd pick or 33rd pick in the draft as of right now.
Well,
what if it's Chicago?
I don't know. Isn't Chicago like on the verge of blowing everything up? Like I don't know if that's
100%. But they were on the verge of blowing everything up last year, and then they called and made a trade for Chase Claypool. And I want to say that I would believe that they wouldn't do it again, but I would believe that they do it again.
Well, were they on the verge of blowing things up last year? Because then they trade for DJ Moore, and that
was after the season.
And they traded for Claypool midseason, right?
Midseason. He was supposed to be their guy midseason. But now they don't have a running back. They just lost like 3 running backs.
Yeah. Yeah, but they're also, I mean, I don't know do they need. I mean, yeah, they lost a bunch of running backs, but didn't they had Dante Foreman. They had a backup that played real well for them last week. Like, and also like, what do they care? Like, I think if you are Chicago, you are like draft picks are your most valuable asset right now. And unless you're trading for like a game, I don't know. I think the only reason they would start offloading draft picks is to get some kind of game-changing quarterback. And
they don't want that. They want Caleb Williams. That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, so it'd have to be a Super Bowl team. At that point, is almost a 3rd-round pick. At that point, I understand. I see where you're coming from. I agree. I
respect Najee Harris as a trade asset.
I do respect Najee Harris as a trade asset, but I just in the grand scheme of where running backs are in the NFL, I don't see Najee Harris's time in Pittsburgh lasting longer than next season. And I just think at that point, like, you're making the decision of, you know, what could happen. And at the same point, like, I mean, is he still worth more than a 2nd-round pick if the second half of the season Jalen touches the rocks 70% of the time and Najee touches it 30% of the time?
Yeah, we're keeping him fresh.
I just don't think running backs have that value, but I see where you're coming from. And I do think that, I think in the grand scheme of things, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm not even listening, you know, like why would I get rid of Najee Harris when Kenny Pickett's a giant question mark? We're 2-0 in the AFC North and we're 3-2 overall. Like, we're still a playoff team. And if we're going to win, we need Najee Harris. Like, it's not going to be through our quarterback. It's going to be through our running back. So I don't think they're listening.
Yeah. I agree with that too. I don't think this is, you know, we're arguing about compensation for a trade that only either of us really see kind of happening at all. Because I still don't think, like, you know, if you're the Steelers, you are looking for ways to get better and make a more plausible playoff push, and that a trade like that would not help you at all.
No. You want to trade for Jalen Ramsey or somebody? Cool. You want to give Najee Harris up for, you know, Patrick Surtain? Let's have a phone call. Let's see what's going on. Well, all right. What about this one? Chicago calls Jalen Johnson, guy, you know, maybe middle tier young corner, starting experience, Najee Harris, straight up.
Straight up? Sure. Why not? Well, because I think you also got to think about where Anthony McFarland is. You know,
true.
Like,
he does return?
Is he healthy? Is he fully healthy? And is he capable of being a running back 3 or running back 2? Like, perfectly fine with him as a running back 3, but running back 2, that seems a little dicey. You know?
Yeah. Not running back 2 in a system where you have a running back 3 that could contribute as a ground and pound guy. You know what I mean? Like, if it's a situation where Anthony McFarland and Jalen Warren are your 1-2 punch on explosive plays, and then you have like a Mark Ingram or somebody or a Najee Harris who comes in here on 3rd and short and 2nd and short or whatever to kind of get those 3-4 yards, agreed there. Like, I think Anthony could be good. If it's Jalen Warren and Anthony, you have the smallest backfield in the NFL, and it's not looking good. I'm looking at real quick before we head out of here, free agents out there, just to say, you know what, maybe Leonard Fournette, big name, Mark Ingram.
True, but he's about to sign with someone. I think Fournette is.
Fournette was reportedly going to Buffalo. Then it was reported that he wasn't going to Buffalo. Does have some interest from a couple of teams. You don't know who those who those teams would be. That's really all. Benny Snell Jr. is still out there. Talk to him, I guess. Give him a phone call. Hey,
familiar in the system,
Benny Snell Jr. He'll get you 2 yards. Doesn't get you much more, but he'll get you 2 yards. That's
if only there were 5 downs. You'd be golden.
If only there were 5 downs. All right, with that, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/allsteelerstalk, and find us anywhere you get your podcast. Check out all of our work at allsteelers.com and all of our pick coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. We will be back on Friday. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.